And maybe it being a massive coup is not what should be the target of our concern. The erosion of our institutions and trust in them over the long haul, that's probably the thing we should be worried about. Unless it's a massive landslide one way or the other in November. If it's close, which they almost always are, whoever loses is going to say the other side cheated.
The Rational View is a weekly series hosted by me, Dr. Alan Scott, providing a rational, evidence-based perspective on important societal issues.
Produced by Soapbox Media.
The world needs evidence-based public policy now more than ever. Making the right decisions should not be partisan politics. Please help spread The Rational View by going to patron.podbean.com/therationalview. Together, we can make a better future. Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Rational View. I'm your host, Dr. Al Scott. In this exciting episode, I have a special returning guest, the famous Michael Shermer, on the show to discuss the interesting times our neighbors to the south are currently experiencing. I'm hoping to discuss the polarization and the bias that have catalyzed conspiratorial thinking emerging around the recent Trump assassination attempt, and what we can learn from how people make decisions and how we can help tame some of the polarization. I hope you like what you're hearing. If you do, please throw me a bone and press like on your podcast app. Feel free to share it with your friends, and I'd love to hear you come visit me on my Facebook group, The Rational View. Dr. Michael Shermer is the founding publisher of Skeptic magazine, the host of the podcast, The Michael Shermer Show, and a presidential fellow at Chapman University, where he teaches Skepticism 101. For 18 years, he was a monthly columnist for Scientific American. He writes a weekly Substack column and is the author of New York Times bestsellers, Why People Believe Weird Things and The Believing Brain, Why Darwin Matters, The Science of Good and Evil, The Moral Arc, Heavens on Earth, and Giving the Devil His Due, Reflections of a Scientific Humanist. Neil deGrasse Tyson called him a beacon of reason and an ocean of irrationality. Michael, welcome back to The Rational View.
Oh, nice to see you. Love the title of your show, The Rational View. Is there any other kind? I guess there's the irrational view, I suppose.
That's what I'm here to oppose, I guess. We last chatted in November 2021, almost 3 years ago now. It was a lot of fun. I've been wanting to get you back on the show since then. We talked about your background and kind of the rise of anti-science sentiment. We talked about religion and science. It was one of my favorite interviews. And thank you for introducing me to Neil deGrasse Tyson. He was also very kind to give me an interview.
Nice. Oh, good. Yeah, I'm glad that worked out. That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been almost 3 years. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've been working on in the meantime? I've seen some evidence that there's a new book out on the street.
Oh, let's see. Right. Conspiracy. Here it is. That's the book since I spoke to you last. Why the rational believe the irrational. You can connect the dots there to spell conspiracy, but you can also spell CIA and Soros. And there may be some other things in there that I haven't spotted yet. But so that's been, my biggest project is trying to do an analysis of why people believe conspiracy theories, what they are, distinction between conspiracies themselves and the conspiracy theories, which are ideas about conspiracies, which do happen. And why there's kind of an underlying rationality to believing in more conspiracy theories as true than actually are, in the sense of a kind of game theoretic signal detection problem. Better to be safe than sorry, assume more are real than are, just in case. Because there are a lot of conspiracies. And so discerning which ones are true or false is really important for you individually, but also socially. And as you've seen, after the Trump assassination, conspiracy, because there's still uncertainties, the people are coming out of the woodwork with their various conspiracy theories about what actually happened beyond just the incompetency of the Secret Service, which seems pretty obvious.
I mean, that was one of the most, I would say, well-documented and filmed assassination attempts in history.
Yes.
Everyone's got a phone, everyone's taking video, there's audio, there's three-dimensional computer analysis.
Already, I know. Yeah.
And my impression up until now has been that the political right has kind of been the group pushing conspiracy theories, the ones most liable to be falling for them. But in the aftermath of this, I don't think so. I think it's, both sides of the political spectrum are inserting their favorite conspiracies. This was a Trump false flag operation. And on the other side, it was the deep state trying to take him out, and the Secret Service was commanded to stand down. So, all of this is kind of based on, mainly on incredulity that the Secret Service could have fucked up so badly.
Yeah, well, this is a government-run operation. And it's interesting to me that a lot of conservatives and libertarians who berate the government for being so inept, so incompetent at things. It's better that private industry do it, or the private sector, or whatever. But when it comes to conspiracies, oh no, the government's a well-oiled machine where everybody knows exactly where they're supposed to be at the right time, and nobody screws up. That's just not how the world works.
Well-orchestrated thing with, bodies dropping here and there and missing Trump by centimeter.
There were, dozens and dozens of Secret Service agents and local police and other officials on site. If there was some orchestrated plan, in which, okay, you're supposed to stand down or ignore the guy on the roof, he's one of ours, or whatever the cover-up is supposed to be. Not one of these people wants to be a whistleblower and say, hey, you know what, this was just not right. I found out about this, and and here's what actually happened. Usually that's how we find out about things. Nefarious activities in government and corporations, or even in academia where there's fraud, is some graduate student or some lower ranked worker or whatever just doesn't feel right about what they're doing, the upper people in management or whatever are doing, and so they come forward, they blow the whistle, and so of course there's nothing like that here. And in any case, again, just the level of incompetency is pretty on par with what you'd expect of a bunch of bureaucrats forgetting to talk to each other, or like don't forget to communicate with the local police or have the police radios on the right channels or whatever. I mean, there's still a lot we don't know, but it looks like that was a big failure to communicate between the Secret Service and the local police about, which buildings were secured properly and who was supposed to be where, and I'll admit that there's enough peculiarities. You go anomaly hunting, which is what people do when they want to find conspiracies. But there are a lot of anomalies, and my last two columns were about this in my Skeptic column, Substack column. The first one was about the history of lone assassins. Most assassinations and assassination attempts are by lone assassins in the history of the United States, but also the history of the world. There are sometimes, occasionally, cabals, like the attempt to the actual assassination of Abraham Lincoln, but the attempt to assassinate the rest of his cabinet, the vice president, secretary of state, and so on. They had big plans. It was, a Southern uprising to, just get the war going again for Southern secession by decapitating the entire Lincoln administration. But the people knew, local police and the government agents in charge of all this knew within, hours, really, that the whole thing was a conspiracy. Counter to that, the only other one comparable is the JFK. And, still there's, the majority of Americans still think there's something fishy about that. But no one has ever been able to, pinpoint who else was involved besides Lee Harvey Oswald. Obviously, he was at least one of the shooters. But was there a second shooter? And so, again, what are we, 60-something years? Yeah, 61 years after the fact now. And we still have nobody who you could even put on trial. Well, they'd be dead by now anyway. But
sure,
I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen with the Trump assassination. But we really did dodge a bullet in the sense that Trump actually died, had just blown his head off right there on, with all the footage. the MAGA people probably would have been up in arms that they killed our leader, and that probably could have led to a lot of violence. So I think we all got lucky there.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not appropriate at any time to be doing this, and people are really highly polarized and upset, I think. Why do people turn to conspiracy so quickly? Like, I mean, sure, there are some discrepancies, but any data set is going to have discrepancies. You can never know everything perfectly. Maybe people aren't used to dealing with incomplete data, and they need to have certainty. And so then their confirmation bias comes in, and they start thinking, well, this must be the other guys.
Yeah.
There has to be a reason behind this. It can't have just been ineptitude.
It's all of that and more. I mean, the uncertainty, if it's somebody big, famous, powerful, that drives conspiracism. There's a disproportionality. It's called the proportionality bias. That is, where there's a big effect, you want a big cause. My example is the Holocaust, one of the worst genocides in human history. The cause of that, one of the worst political regimes in human history. There's a balance there. Right. But, JFK assassinated by a lone gunman and lone nut. Princess Diana died of drunk driving, speeding, no seatbelt. I mean, 9/11, you're telling me 19 guys with box cutters? Come on. That just doesn't feel proportional to the size of the effect, which was huge. And, the same thing here. It's Trump, for gosh sakes, bigger than life. And, here's this big event and then you see the shooter. It's like, that guy? Are you kidding me? Just this dweeby looking 20-year-old. But, on the other hand, if it was a conspiracy, really, that's the guy you would hire to put a hit out on the president? I mean, this guy? Really?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't look like exactly like Luca Brasi
whatsoever
in The Godfather, like one of these mafia hit guys. Come on.
I'm sure if it was a well-organized conspiracy, they could have got some sort of trained mercenary to do that. Yeah. So recent events, I think, in the U.S. Have gotten really intense, or they seem intense, with the assassination attempt. Now, Joe Biden recently stepping down as the Democratic representative for the next election, setting up Kamala Harris as the next contender. We live in interesting times.
I've never seen anything quite like this. I mean, it's probably comparable to 1968. I was in 8th grade, so still kind of young to pay attention to those sorts of things. But, the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., and then the withdrawal from his presidency as the presidential candidate for that election, Lyndon Johnson. And then, RFK, the original, the father, enters the race. And then gets assassinated himself. Again, a lone nut who said he did it, but then withdrew his confession, and that led to conspiracism. The Vietnam War, all the unrest and riots and stuff in the cities that summer. Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty crazy year. This is comparable to that, I would say. If we can get through
riots in the cities, and
if we can get through the 2024 election this November without violence and upheaval and the stock market crashing and violence in the city, I'm just going to consider ourselves lucky. 1968 did have the Apollo 8 that went around the moon. First time anyone did that. Maybe we'll have something like that. Maybe Elon will send people to Mars or something later this year. Make us feel good about our species.
Finish the symmetry, right? I mean, the people are I think inequity is kind of rampant in the economy. People have been fed an accelerating diet of fear-mongering by the billionaire-backed partisan media outlets. Social media monetizes extreme viewpoints. There's troll farms that are trying to break down cohesion. How is this affecting people in the U.S.? Like, what's the sentiment? Are people nervous, on edge?
Yeah, for sure. I think so. I mean, it depends how much you pay attention to the news, particularly on social media. I mean, if you're old school, you just watch the nightly news. That's a lot already. I mean, even before recent events, Trump was the headline every single night. And, I just kind of toggle around between CBS, ABC, NBC News, just the nightly news for half an hour, just like they did decades ago. My father did, and so on. I'm kind of old school that way, although I do pay attention to social media. But Trump was on. He was the lead story pretty much every night. Right? Maybe if there was a massive storm or a school shooting, he was one of those three. and that was before the recent events. So it's just, it's insane. So it really, with the availability heuristic, that is to say, if you ask people what they're concerned about the most or what fears they have, it's whatever comes available immediately to mind, usually from stuff that people have been seeing on TV. Shark attacks, terrorist attacks, whatever is in the news. That's the availability bias. And, with that engaged, you can't help but think, things are bad and getting worse. It's never been this bad. Well, it is pretty bad. I don't know if it's, never been this bad. It's not the Great Depression of the 30s. It's not World War II, and Trump really is not Hitler. I really thought that was a terrible idea when the Dems first started making that equation. People with Trump derangement syndrome, that is a thing. I mean, people cannot seem to think clearly about him. I mean, I'm not a fan of Trump, but, he's not Hitler. Now, finally, they're going, yeah, okay, he's not Hitler. Yeah, a little late. So that polarization has not been helpful on the left.
He seems to be a bit of a distraction, right? He's not the cause of the problem. He's a symptom of the problems of the polarization, in my opinion, at least, and the focus on his antics is kind of like a circus that keeps it's like a train wreck that you can't look away from. But getting upset with him isn't going to solve the problem of this left-right bias and polarization and separate realities, a fact that have been kind of built up by basically partisan media streams funded by billionaires.
That's part of it. Yeah, I think there's multiple factors. I don't know, 50 years from now, historians writing a kind of an analysis of what we're going through now, they'll probably have half a dozen or a dozen different factors going on. Maybe it'll be overdetermined, but all that you just described, income inequality is probably also a factor. The whole race politics of the left, the mega, politics of the right, the far left, the far right. It's really four different factions now, not just left and right. There's kind of the far left, woke, progressive, whatever you want to call them, and then the normal liberals, and then you have the sort of right of center conservatives like Mitt Romney or Liz Cheney, that kind of John McCain kind of conservative, and then you have the MAGA right. And so I really think we have four different big cohorts there that are fighting amongst themselves. And because we have a two-party system, it's, there's just two teams. You can only vote for one or the other. You can throw away your vote if you want for whatever reason, but it's not going to do any good. And that's just, I don't know how to change that, because the people that would have to change are the ones that are benefiting most from a two-party system. So they're not going to vote that out. So I think that's all causal factors there.
I want to poke a little bit about what you said about Trump isn't Hitler. I realize that people get way out of whack when confronted with all of the things, the new things that no one else would have gotten away with. We seem to think. So yes, Trump isn't Hitler, but before Hitler became dictator for life of the Germans, he wasn't Hitler either, right? It goes back to do you kill Hitler as a baby before he's done anything? What's the morality of that? And sure, Trump hasn't taken over and destroyed U.S. democracy yet.
Yeah, I don't see. I know the arguments. I don't see how he could do it. To take over a country, an actual coup, you need the military, you need the courts. You need to control the judicial system, and you need to also control the media. How's he going to do that? He can't just buy all the networks and then fire everybody he doesn't like. How's he going to?
Doesn't he own the Supreme Court?
Does he own it? Well, no, they have not. They've done some things he likes, but as he himself has complained about other things that did not favor his policies. For example, his own claim that the 2020 election was rigged, and he's going to take this all the way to the Supreme Court. They said, no, there's just nothing there. It's nothing for us to even hear, because he lost 36 local court lawsuits saying that the election was rigged. It wasn't, and they threw it out with lack of evidence. I mean, almost comically so. Like there was that scene where Rudy Giuliani and his assistant appear before the judge, and they go, we have the evidence that the election was rigged. All right, let's see it. And he turns to his assistant. You brought that, right? No, I left it at the hotel room. What? I mean, it's just like, it was just comical. I mean, that's the level Giuliani's at. And, the military, their allegiance really is to the commander in chief, who is still Biden, and the Constitution. And, not to just some would-be dictator. They just, if he ordered, I don't know what he would order, close the borders and I'm going to go in the White House and don't let anybody in. And they're not going to follow what he says. They just won't, so I don't see how he could actually pull a coup. And I don't think that's one argument. Another argument, it's more subtle than that. It would happen like a slow train wreck over many, many years of slow policy changes, something like that. Maybe, but I need to see more specific examples of how this would happen. There's this Project 2025 people are talking about, but when you read the clips from it or the alleged excerpts from it on social media, and you actually read the paragraph that's in the document, it's very different. Just like all women are going to have to go back to being housewives, and really, is that what it says? That isn't what it says. It says children raised in a intact home with a father and mother are better off than those raised by single moms or whatever, divorced parents or whatever. That's true on average, but it's kind of a meaningless generalization, because lots and lots of kids raised by single moms do just fine. One of them became president of the United States, Barack Obama, right? It's, but it's kind of looking for that, handmaiden's tale. This is, what the overturning of Roe v. Wade means. Well, it doesn't mean that. It just means it's a states' rights thing. So federalism, going back to the founding fathers, was actually a pretty good system. We don't want the government to be too powerful. States have their rights, and states should make decisions for themselves. We have 50 different experiments. Most of the time, most people like that. They don't think the government should have that much power. But, once something becomes national law and one party likes it, pro-choice, then that seems great. Then you take it away, but they didn't ban it, and Trump has said, I'm not in favor of a national ban on abortion. And okay, well, then he's not as bad as some of the other people. There are some people on the far right that want to go that far. I just heard this morning what the Ohio Supreme Court said to uphold the law that abortions are illegal after 6 weeks. That's bad, but we have 50 states. Different states are going to do different things. That's not a dictatorship.
So, the question really is, how stable is U.S. democracy? I've had a couple discussions with Dr. Stephen Levitsky, who wrote the book How Democracies Die. Basically, he's done studies on smaller Central American countries and how fledgling democracies have been overthrown and become authoritarian. And basically, the summary is that there aren't laws that keep the democracy. There aren't enough laws to keep democracy functioning. If both sides need to respect the other's right to govern, you need to have someone in power who is going to relinquish the reins of government when they lose. And if you don't have that, then the system starts to fall apart. Legislatures that intentionally use the law as an excuse to undermine the democratic traditions of your country have really put the system in a mess. And I think, that comes up big when you think about, how Trump was forced out of office. He never said, okay, you win, Joe, your turn to govern. That never happened. And he's never, as far as I know, said that he would respect the results of an election. Is that?
Yeah, that's troublesome. Yeah, absolutely. And the violence on January 6th, this was not good. But still, he's gone. Biden has been in charge ever since. So, apparently, whatever he thought he could do, the system
was able to work.
Yeah.
I think, thanks to Mike Pence having enough honor to not fall for the hidden electors trick.
Mike
we were
Pence,
able to avoid bloodshed.
Kudos to Mike and Liz Cheney and all the others that stood up to Trump and held the hearings. Yeah, it's as bad, it's worse than we knew, on Trump's part. And he's probably going to be president again, or at least there's a good shot of it. Let's say at least 50-50, probably more. And so what does Levinsky think he could do this time around that would prevent him from ever leaving again, assuming he's still alive at, let's say, 4 years from now if he wins at his age? How many more years could he go in any case? But how would he do that?
Yeah. So, I mean, his statement was, there's still a lot of opposition. There's strong bureaucracy, for example, that stood up to Trump last time around. And as you say, the courts, many of the courts are still very independent. But of course, if you read Project 2025, it's a roadmap to fire all those bureaucrats and replace them with loyalists, right? So the question is, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on you. Can't fool me twice.
you can't get fooled again. Yeah, that's so funny. Yes. Well, again, I don't know. I mean, I suppose anything is possible. It just seems so unlikely. The analogs with South American or Central American countries with crappy governments and weak constitutions and a weak rule of law, and I don't know, there it's far more likely to happen, and does happen. We're not Weimar Germany, which was a brand new democracy, just barely recovering from the First World War, and then a massive inflation, and then the Depression, and I mean it's just not comparable to what the United States has as a 250-year-old history almost of a constitutional republic. I just don't see how he could make that happen. I mean, let's say he wins, and then 4 years from now he can't run again. He can't change the Constitution. He's served 2 terms. That's it. So he'd have to actually have an amendment to the Constitution. That's not going to happen. It's just not. I mean, you have 2/3 of the states are going to sign on just so Trump can be president for an extra term. That's not going to happen. So, I mean, at worst, it would be J.D. Vance. That's why he picked him. He's like the future of MAGA, maybe. Vance is not my politics for sure. But, again, he doesn't seem to be Hitler either. So I don't know.
I don't know if he would have the moral fiber of Mike Pence, though.
Probably, yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, yeah, I think he did say, didn't he, that he would not have done what Mike Pence did. I think he implied counting the electoral
that
ballots.
whole situation about the fake electors. I mean, this is still slowly marching through the courts, right? It still hasn't come to none of the people have come to justice, except for the ones who have made deals, right?
That was the Georgia case, right?
I think there's Michigan, Georgia, Nevada, and Arizona have all had indictments placed back in December. In April. I think Arizona put theirs out in April. I think one of the conspirators who actually settled his case by admitting that he had forged fake electoral certificates is now back on the Wisconsin Elections Commission.
Yeah. That's troublesome. That's troubling. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So again, I'm not saying it can't happen. It could. And maybe it being a massive coup is not what should be the target of our concern. The erosion of our institutions and trust in them over the long haul. That's probably the thing we should be worried about. The integrity of elections, and no matter, unless it's a massive landslide one way or the other in November. If it's close, which they almost always are, whoever loses is going to say the other side cheated. And that could be the case if Trump wins. Hillary, remember initially she said that she thought there were some shenanigans in the 2016 election. She was, for a while anyway, an election denier, not on the level of Trump, even close, but still. And, as I document in my conspiracy book, pretty much every losing party in every presidential election going all the way back thinks the other side cheated. Now, the difference is that at some point they go, okay, never mind. I can't prove it, or, oh, what the hell? Let's just work on the next election. That's normally what happens. That Trump has never admitted it. That's unusual. And he has his evidence is just a lot of people are saying. Which people? Well, a lot of people. That's not evidence. That's an erosion. So that's an erosion.
Super confirmation bias. There's one guy over there.
Yeah. And, the media, no one trusts the media. And there's a big collapse in trust in scientific institutions.
That's a problem.
After
both
COVID.
of those are problematic, right? Because the media, the fourth estate is a necessary pillar of a healthy democracy. And really, it's been completely discredited, right? Nobody trusts what you hear in the media anymore. So it basically opens you up to the silo that you want to listen to, right? I think, the healthiest approach is to listen to many medias, listen to both sides of the argument, listen to foreign media, and derive your views that way. But people just don't do that, do they?
Mm-hmm. No, it's a problem.
It hurts.
I mean, some do. I try to. I read multiple newspapers, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, sometimes the Washington Post. I used to read the LA Times, but they're gone now off the deep end politically. But, then there's just tons of social media. I scroll through Twitter and there's a lot of crazy stuff, but there's interesting stuff as well. And the community notes that Elon added is really helpful. There's a lot of really good debunking there, good skeptical debunking. Here's a video of something that happened yesterday, and then somebody will post that video is 4 years old. It was debunked back then. Oh, okay. So that's good.
It's helpful to see the counter argument right there, isn't it?
Yeah, in real time. Yeah. So fact checking sites like Politico, what is it? Yeah, Snopes, Politico, and I think it's factcheck.org. Anyway, there's enough of those now that fact check politicians' speeches in real time. They did that with the Trump with the debate. Biden in his disaster, but Trump lied 36 times or something. Not just I was the greatest president ever. I mean, how are you going to fact check that? It's just subjective. I'm really smart, really really smart. Okay, all right, but just specific things like I had the biggest tax reduction in U.S. history. Not true. Reagan's tax cuts were bigger than Trump's and so on. Lots of things like that. So, yeah, I mean, he's a liar. He's a pathological liar. I mean, he lies even when he doesn't have to lie, even when it doesn't benefit him. So he's what's called a bullshitter. There's research on the difference between lying and bullshitting. Liars actually care about the truth because they need to remember what it is so they can distort it in their particular direction for their own means. Bullshitters just say they don't care what's true or false. It doesn't matter. They're just, like Steve Bannon said, just throw shit at the system just to confuse people so they won't know what to think, and then we'll tell them what to think. That's bullshitting.
Yeah, it's interesting and trying to figure out, I just did a recent episode on, is it rational to vote for Donald Trump? Like, why do people cling on to this? Why do the evangelical Christians hold this guy up, the paragon of sin, as their representative? And I think the rationality comes in the disenfranchisement with the status quo. Right?
That's part of it. My answer is that it's a team sport. There's just two teams. You got to pick one. Most people, and I just say 90% of voters just vote their team. So all these debates and commercials and all this stuff, it's just window dressing. People are going to vote Democrat or Republican. It doesn't matter who's at the head of the ticket. So that covers a lot of it. And then there's who's going to get us the policies we want. So in the case of Trump,
before you go on, the teams, is that mainly a hereditary thing? Like your parents vote this, you've voted this team? Or...
there's research on this, the psychology of politics, and it's both genetic and cultural. Obviously, how
cultural.
Your parent. Okay, so you inherit from your parents not only the environment that they set up for you, but you inherit their genes. Now, there's not genes for liberals and conservatives exactly, but the research on this is pretty interesting. This is behavior genetics, and it has to do with which party in their worldview feels right to you, just by temperament. These are my people. I feel good around these people. These are my friends, and they're all in the same party, and it's fun to talk to them about the other side, at what we don't like, and I like the worldview that they stand for. Now, but what does that mean? Well, so like one of it is on the big five personality dimensions: openness to experience, ocean, OCEAN, openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, introversion, agreeableness, disagreeableness, and neuroticism. So people that are high in openness to experience and high in agreeableness tend to be more liberal. They're more open to immigrants. Say they like to travel. They have more like travel books in their library. They actually do travel more. They are not as they're a little more. They're not as risk averse about like new environments and trying new things. And what that's a proxy for is politically is I'm more open to immigrants. I'm more open to change. I'm more open to like let's change the system and do something different. I'm not worried about it. It's going to work out, and we want to make the world better in this direction. And conservatives, of course, what by definition they want to conserve traditional institutions in the kind of Burkean sense of religion, family, flag, law and order, courts. These institutions have been built over centuries, thousands of years, and it's a bad idea to just throw them out and start over. Burke's famous book on this was contrasting the American Revolution with the French Revolution. The Americans did it carefully, legally, slowly. We did have a war, but they laid out all their complaints, and here's why we are leaving England. Here's the 27 things the king did we don't like, and we're going to do all this, have a new constitution, and so on. The French just said, to hell with it. We're just going to destroy everything, just burn it all down and start over.
Kill them
including,
all.
we're going to have a new metric system. We're going to have a new calendar. It's the year zero, and that was just too much. And it did in a bloodbath. Okay, back to my point. People that are a little more risk averse, they're lower in openness to experience. They're high in conscientiousness. They like things that are kind of set, rule bound, predictable, not a lot of change. I know where I'm going to be tomorrow, like I am today. I know where I'm going to be in 10 years from now. And I know what, everything is in its right place. That feels good to me. I like that. And now who are you going to vote for? You're going to gravitate toward conservatives and, all right, the conservative, who's that? Oh, it's the Republicans. All right. Who's the guy? All right. It doesn't really matter who it is. He's spouting, 8 of the 10 things I like in political policy that leads to a world in which I like to live. Anyway, I think giving you the theory.
The basic distinguisher between those two viewpoints is whether you look back on the old days as the good old days, or you look back on them as the bad old days.
Yes, yeah. So, right. The what's the line about a bad it's good to have a bad memory if you think that we want to get back to the good old days, because these are the good old days. There's really never been a better time to be alive by pretty much any metric, but everybody says that. I mean, most campaigns are, if you're campaigning and you're out of power, then you have to say things are bad and getting worse, but we're going to get back to the way we liked it, and Make America Great Again is a pretty dramatic version of this. But the Democrats have their own versions. Remember Obama, change we can believe in, hope and change, hopey changey, right? Change from what? Hope from what? From the horrible years of the Bush administration. And of course, Bush is saying, Clinton destroyed the country. We got to get back to the Reagan years. And of course, Reagan's like, we got to get back to the, everybody does that.
Yeah. And the Republican, I think the capitalist system and the Republicans have been pushing a narrative for, over 100 years now that the government is bad and inept, and government regulation is always going to hurt the markets. And, we need less regulation. And, they've been advertising this and sponsoring the Chicago School of Economics. And, this whole story is coming to a head now, and that some people just want to break it all down, right? We don't need government. Government's bad. Yeah,
except Trump. That's not Trump. He's not a conservative economically. He's an economic nationalist. He's kind of pre-Adam Smith mercantilists, that it's a zero-sum game. And if the Chinese are succeeding, it means we're losing. we're losing badly, but we're going to win. We're going to win so much. But what he means by that is we're going to put tariffs on imports. Well, how does that help American consumers? It doesn't. They have to pay more money right out of their pockets. That doesn't help consumers. This was Adam Smith's original point, is that it should be consumer-based, not producer-based. That an economy that's producer-based is going to lead to, what's called rent-seeking at the time. That is, we're looking for special favors from the government to protect our industry against these industrialists in this other country that are making the goods cheaper and better than we are, and people are importing them, and we don't like that because we can't compete against that. So that's economic nationalism. That's Trump's economic policy. So he's not a conservative in that sense, which is why I said I think we really have four different cohorts here, because he's. When he talks about his economic policy, most conservatives are like, what? That's not conservatism. We like free markets and small government. Trump likes a big, massive government. We're going to intervene and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. That's big government. Of course, Reagan did the same thing. He imposed tariffs on Honda and Yamaha. Remember, I had a Yamaha 125 motorcycle in the early 80s, and Reagan said, "We're going to put a tariff on those motorcycles." I'm like, what? How's that helping me? Now I have to pay more money for a motorcycle. But it helped it helped Harley Davidson. It's an American company, right? We're going to save American jobs, and we're going to make these automobile manufacturers, now Trump, put their production factories in America. Yeah, and then the cars are going to go up like 50% more in cost. You think Ford Motor is just going to bite the bullet and just take lower profits? No, they're just going to raise their prices. So how does that help American consumers? It doesn't. So Trump is not a conservative in that sense.
Interesting. But getting back to the point about elections, and so 90% of people are voting their party. And the rest of the window dressing of the campaign, they spent hundreds of millions, if not billions, on advertising for the swing voters, the 10% that are undecided. And really, I think the media is failing in falling for the circus of Donald Trump rather than looking at the issues. Right? There's no way a rational person looking at these campaigns could make a decision based on policy, as far as I can tell.
What would be good if Kamala Harris, had made a commercial saying what I just said. If you really believe in free markets and you're a conservative in that sense, you need to vote Democrat because our policies are better than Trump's. He's not a conservative. He's a economic nationalist. That's going to hurt. Exactly what I said. That could be interesting, but you won't hear that. You'll just hear about all his lies and stuff. Okay, but again,
it's attacking the personality rather than
at this point. Yeah, it's a cult of personality. But I've also asked Christians. I do a number of God debates over the last for 25 years. But when I was doing them during Trump, some of them were in churches, and I would say, all right, just as a side note, how can you possibly vote for Trump? How can you support this guy? You're the team of family values and morality and all this stuff. Come on, do I need to list everything? They're like, yeah, we know. And their answer was, God works in mysterious ways. He picks odd characters. Look at the Bible. The Bible is filled with these bizarre characters that are flawed, sinful, arrogant, narcissists, and so on. Trump's just like those guys. And then, of course, the more Machiavellian argument is that he'll get us to judges we want to overturn Roe, which has always been one of their things. And he did. So now, of course, they say, you see, this is why we support him. He got us what we wanted.
How did that happen?
How did that happen? Well,
how did the Supreme Court end up getting stacked with Republicans? Like the Republican Senate stopped Obama, but the Democrats just let Trump walk over them.
Well, the Democrats also, there's a story. This comes from Bill Maher, comedian. He called this before Biden resigned. He called this Ruth Bader Biden. So his story is that Obama, when he was still in office, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg was being treated for cancer, and she's old and frail already. that he met with her and said, now would be a good time while I'm president to step down so we can get a Supreme Court justice like you. And oh, no, I can do it. And then she dies under Trump's. Okay, so now, of course, that's kind of how it goes.
But it seemed very asymmetric. Like the Republicans stopped Obama from appointing a replacement, but in this last 2 months of office, whereas Trump appointed a replacement in the last week of his office.
Oh, it's just ridiculous how that. Yeah, they grandstanded on Merrick Garland. Sorry,
Merrick Garland.
Yeah, Merrick Garland, right, as Obama's pick. Yeah, what was that? 11 months before the election. It's like, come on. That's, again, I don't like that. The Republicans, they don't play by the rules. They cheat. Well, maybe they all do. But anyway, that's my sense. I don't like that.
Yeah, it seemed that, the Republicans were strong and they, pushed the system to the edge of the law, as it were. And the Democrats just kind of bent over and took it. So it just seemed odd from an outsider's point of view that it was so asymmetric, that there was that power imbalance.
I don't know why the rules about that are not firmer. Like, there was like 11 months. Isn't that long enough? And, no, we have to wait for the people to speak in the next election. There must be, isn't there a rule about that in the system? Like, no, that's it. The president gets to pick
Levitsky's observation, right? That there aren't rules for many of the traditions that have come up around a functioning democracy.
I see. Yeah. Well, there he's probably right. That is, we probably need to stiffen up those rules, make them laws. The president is going to appoint a Supreme Court nominate a Supreme Court justice, and the Congress has to hear it within, I don't know, like 8 weeks or something, just some law. And you don't have any choice. You can't grandstand. Yeah, that should be, I agree with him on that.
So we've come to the situation where the Supreme Court has passed a law that's basically made the president a king, somewhat immune to be prosecuted for anything they do officially in office. And they're not allowed to take into account on anything unofficial they do, any of their past actions. So, it seems like they're going back to the monarchy effectively. If you look at what the U.S. stands for and why it broke with England in the first place, this was one of the things, that the president is a person who's not above the law.
Mm-hmm.
That seems odd that would happen in the U.S.
That was not a good decision. No. The whole point of the president, no one's above the law in our system. It should always be like that.
Mm-hmm. So do you see, I'm very interested, and I wonder, now that Joe Biden is not trying for re-election and he's basically got carte blanche in the last few months of his tenure, wonder what's going to happen. Do you see anything, any big Democratic moves before the election?
Well, there's the lame duck problem. He probably won't be able to do anything big. He could do a lot of pardoning. He could probably get stuff for Ukraine and Israel done, just in case Trump's not likely to abandon Israel, but he could abandon Ukraine or try to broker a deal in which Russia ends up with more than just Crimea. Maybe they end up with that Donbass region, something like that. I do think if I was Jewish, I'm not, but I'm a supporter of Israel. I think what Trump did with Israel was good, and they like him, and and like with Kim Jong-un, nothing happened, right? But nothing happened. Maybe him talking to some of these people is at least better than fighting. I don't know. Sometimes I do listen to RFKJ on his railing about the military industrial complex and the endless wars that both, he accuses both the libs and the conservatives of continuing the endless wars to keep the machine going. Yeah. He has a point there. Just when Democrats are in power, things don't get easier and cheaper with wars and the military. The budget goes up. The Pentagon, well, we need more money. We need another aircraft carrier. We need, a super, super, super stealthy bomber, and it's $1 billion each. Yeah, no problem. And, maybe the Democrats don't want to be considered weak, so they want to continue to support the military in that sense. I don't know. It's too bad RFKJ is such a kook on so many other areas, conspiracies and vaccines and all this stuff about Big Pharma. I mean, he has a few points here and there, like Big Pharma capturing the regulatory state. He's right. They did. I mean, they cheated the system. They did. Okay, fine. But, that's what the laws are for. And that's why Purdue Pharmaceutical and the Sackler family is in big trouble because they did that. Okay, but you can't run a whole presidential campaign as an independent on that, right? You got to have strong positions on other things. You have to be, again, it's a two-team system. It's, he's not on all 50 ballots. Could have been a libertarian because they're on all the ballots, but he's not a libertarian. So, I have to wish my wife's from Germany. They have 4 or 5 parties, viable. All of them are just viable. No one gets a majority. No one has extra power. You have to, make compromises.
Make a coalition.
With coalitions. Yeah, that's good to me. If the point of our Constitution is to, division of powers there, so that nobody gets too much, then a 2-party system is not the best system in the world.
We have kind of a 3-party system here in Canada. And we've had, several minority governments, and I think most people would agree that the best things happen when we have minority government coalitions.
Yeah.
In terms of politician, you don't get the extreme views being paraded around as, it almost breaks down the polarization to a certain extent, because now the government has to please more people than just their base. And I think it's worked pretty well.
What do average Canadians think of Trudeau?
So, I see myself as an average Canadian. Trudeau, Pierre was a masterful politician, the father. Yeah. And he had a very good knowledge of international affairs, and he was a union supporter, and, he understood Confederation in Canada and the monarchy and all this stuff. His son Justin has a good hairdo, and he was a theater teacher.
Really?
So yeah, he was a school teacher who taught theater. So he's a good actor. He appears good on camera. He speaks very well. My impression is that he's not that deep in the political thinking area. He didn't come with, a burning issue or to do anything. He mostly is there because he has a recognizable name and he looks good on camera. And, people are okay to vote for that because he's willing to, he's on the right team, right? He listens to liberal thinkers. He's open to the advice of the right people, but it also leads him astray because he doesn't really, in most cases, most of his thinking is partisan and tribal, I think, rather than good for the country. So, and there's a very loud group on the right who basically are just fuck Trudeau is their slogan, and they have big flags and they have parades, and they're very angry at him being woke.
I gathered that from Jordan Peterson and Gad Saad, who I follow and know. And if you just listen to them, Trudeau's Hitler. Right.
Yeah. It's this cult of personality of the leader. He's not an important person in terms of the thinking and he's not written books on important issues. He's not really had an opinion as far as I can tell. He's just the figurehead for the left right now.
Yeah.
So if you don't like the left, he embodies that. And so, yeah, I'm again, some of his picks, like he picked for environment minister, a Greenpeace activist who was in prison for scaling the CN Tower. And and then that's his environment minister. And so, we've had a lot of problems with him when we're trying to get nuclear power back, but he's come around. We had a lot. The Canadians for Nuclear Energy did a lot of lobbying and have successfully managed to get the Pickering nuclear plant license extended, and they're looking to refurbish it now. So, overall, I think it's not been bad. It's just been, I would like for politicians to be selected based on their knowledge rather than their looks.
Yes, that would be nice. Yes. That's another one of those weird political orientation things. Nuclear power. How can you not be in favor of that if you're an environmentalist? It's carbon free. I know the arguments on both sides, but it's just that. But the counter arguments to the, it's going to be Chernobyl. It's not. There's never going to be another Chernobyl. No one's going to make a device like that again. That's not going to happen.
And if you measure the damage of burning coal in Chernobyls per day, and compare the two, maybe you would come to a different conclusion as to nuclear's viability.
Yeah, exactly. Look what happened to Germany, and now they're having to turn to, first they turned to Russia to get their power, and now they're building coal-fired plants. Oh, great. That's going to be just great for the environment. Yeah. Yeah,
no, definitely. They're kind of the poster child for political ideology over good rational policy.
And that one, and then also GMOs. GMOs are one of the best things that ever invented for poor people.
Oh my God, yes.
Right? And then environments, we care about the environment and we care about poor people. No, you don't. Not if you're opposing the very technologies that could, help those people. Basically, nuclear power for energy and, more food, better, higher quality food. Yeah.
The advantage of modern farming techniques and productivity per unit land is unequivocal, right? It eliminates hunger. Obviously we can all object to patenting seeds or things that, make us subservient to Monsanto or whatever these things are.
That's economic policy. That should be handled by the regulatory state that controls business and monopolies. Not a philosophical movement. There's something interesting about this. Not my idea, but I like the idea of invisible contaminants. Things you can't see that are poisoning us. And nuclear energy, you can't smell it, taste it, touch it. It's just this invisible force, and genes, they're doing what to the genes inside the tomato? They put fish genes in the tomato. What? It just feels, kind of creepy, and I can't see it. It's going to get in my body. Same thing with, vaccines. Like, you want to put some of the bad stuff in my body? Yeah. It's invisible and it's in there.
Nature knows best.
Yeah.
Right. And science is unnatural, so therefore bad. We're playing God.
Right.
But, with however many billion people we have on Earth, if we don't, we're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. So, and again, in the environmental movement and, the natalist movement, anti-natalist movement, that people are bad and Elon's been on about this for years. That
degrowth.
Yes, right. Hey, just having babies is bad, and I don't know. It's like that's another one of those, I think, philosophical positions that the environmentalists shoot themselves in the foot on. Why not celebrate closing the ozone and carbon credits and nuclear power and the green revolution for agriculture? These are all things that help the environment and help poor people. Why not take credit for that? Say, look, back in the 60s, our protests brought these things about. Instead, they just constantly complain things are bad and getting worse. Well, then why bother to try?
It's definitely a self-defeating system. Wait a generation, we won't have to worry about them.
Maybe. Yeah, we'll go to Mars.
So it's been great to talk to you again, Michael. We're at the end of our time. Really appreciate you coming on the show again.
Oh, you're welcome. Yes, well, we can do it next year after the election, see if we're still around.
Great discussion. I'm sure we'll still be around. I don't know how happy we'll be, but...
Yeah.
Look forward to it. Thank you so much.
All right. Nice to talk to you.
If you'd like to follow up with more in-depth discussions, please come find us on Facebook at The Rational View and join our discussion group. If you like what you're hearing, please consider visiting my Patreon page at patron.podbean.com/therationalview. Thanks for listening.